I kind of can't even believe I'm saying this, but the original Urban Decay Naked palette is back. She's back. Is she better than ever or a little overrated? We're gonna dive in. Let's go. Y'all, once upon a time, I had this palette back in the day, in the beginning of time. It was my very first high-end palette that I purchased. Now, this did release in 2010. I did not purchase it in 2010. It was more like 2013, 2014 for me. When I purchased it, I wanna say, I know that when it launched, it was $44 from looking online. I feel like when I purchased it, it might have been $48, it might have been $50. I remember at one point it went up to $52, $54, but right now, this one, I went out and purchased because I decluttered mine. And when I decluttered it, I had instant regrets, and now this is a $59 eyeshadow palette. So since I no longer had mine, I wanted to try it out. I wanted to see, am I still loving this formula? Am I still loving this palette? Or is it just the nostalgia that sucked me in? You know what I mean? Like, is it overrated? Is it hyped up just because it's hyped up? Or is it really good? We're gonna dive in. We're gonna create this look together. Let's go. Okay, so we are going to work a little backwards and we are going to dip into my eyes first. I'm doing some double duty, creating a couple looks. And hello, just caught the brush that was in here, but we are going to play with the new re-release of the original Naked palette from Urban Decay. I'm so excited to put this on my eyeballs. We're gonna create a look and we're just gonna talk about like the nostalgia of it all, right? Like, these Naked palettes from Urban Decay created such a stir, such a roar back in the day, like when I was starting my journey on YouTube. I think I started consuming YouTube. I'm gonna go into this first shade right here in Virgin. I started watching beauty YouTube, I wanna say probably around the end of 2013 or beginning of 2014. And then before I actually created my YouTube channel, I had an Instagram account. I mean the same one, KBellaBeauty. I had my Instagram account first. That I think I started in 2014. So it might have been early 2014 when I started to really get into the beauty space, or even realize that there was a beauty space. And I remember when I first started watching YouTube or even looking at Instagram, I mean, we're thinking this is like 2013, 2014. By that time, I'm pretty sure the Urban Decay original, the Naked 1 and the Naked 2 were out. I didn't look up the releases, but I remember hemming and hawing over both of these palettes, the Naked and the Naked 2, trying to figure out which one was going to be for me, like which one I actually wanted to purchase. Because y'all, this was my first large eyeshadow palette purchase, like in my adult life, in my life. This was the first one, not this particular palette. This was the re-release, but the original that I purchased back in 2013, 2014. This was my first high-end purchase. Okay, so ironically enough, I was trying to scroll through my YouTube to see if I ever did a video on the original Naked palette, and I did not, which makes me believe that I purchased this before I had my channel, like in the Instagram days. So I feel like I probably have a photo on Instagram that I'll insert right here of like the first time that I took a picture of this palette. But it's just crazy to like think back in that era of my life. I mean, like I said, I was hemming and hawing over this palette. Like, I remember, I think I'm gonna go into Buck right here. I remember like really watching so many videos. I remember talking to my friend Smags about like which palette she thought I should get. And I remember the Urban Decay Naked 3. Like, that's how I know that it was just 1 and 2 that were out, because I remember already being in the beauty space when the Naked 3 was being announced. And the only one that I ever ended up purchasing was the original Naked. I'm pretty sure I ended up leaning toward that one because of the warm tones. If I'm remembering correctly, Naked 1 was the one, obviously, that had the warm toned color story. The Naked 2 was a little bit cooler. And then the Naked 3, I think, was more of a rosy tone. I don't think my friend Smegs had the original, but I think she had the second or the third, because I remember borrowing hers before I actually purchased mine. And if you think about it, when I purchased this re-release, I spent $59 at Ulta, y'all. This palette is now $59, but back in the day when I purchased it for the first time, it was $44. And I remember thinking that was a lot of money. And then I remember before it got discontinued, I think at one point they went up to like $49. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, 50 bucks for a palette. Now that I'm thinking about it, did I pay 50 bucks for the palette? I just might have. I think when I purchased it, it was already up to $50. Regardless, when it first came out, it was $44 and the price has steadily increased. But I can say that I'm not surprised to see it sitting at $59 now for a couple of reasons. One being that the reason why this came back was Urban Decay said a lot of people were asking for it, and honestly, I think that it's like the nostalgia of it all. I don't think that this color story is like taking people by storm. I don't think that it's new and revolutionary. I think that it's honestly thinking back to like, you know, a more simple time in the beauty space when you could just sit in front of a camera and like barely have any edits and just talk about makeup and people would watch it. Nowadays, it's like, if I'm just sitting here talking, if I'm a talking head, nobody's gonna be interested in that video. People wanna see something happening. We're gonna go in with Naked right here. You know, I feel like this palette made its mark. You know, it was one that I purchased because of the hype getting into the beauty space, because of so many people in the beauty space talking about it. But at the same time, I try my best to be realistic with my makeup collection. I have more makeup, more eyeshadow than any one person needs. I mean, it's my hobby, it's my passion, it's what I enjoy, I have fun with it. But at the same time, I do try to look at my collection. I try to declutter things that I'm not using, because while I did spend my hard-earned money on it and I want to get my money's worth, I don't want makeup to go to waste in my collection. So I try to be very cognizant of that. And because of that, that is why my original Naked palette left my collection. I can't remember exactly when I decluttered it. I'll probably try and like go back into the archives of my channel and see if there was a time when I talked about it in a declutter. I don't remember when I decluttered this palette, but I remember thinking that the only palette that I really used was this one right here in Half Baked. That's what I'm about to put on my lids right now, because I remember loving that one. But I remember I really only used Half Baked. My collection started growing, and this palette was not limited edition at the time that I decluttered it. Now, Urban Decay was coming out with more Naked palettes, but there were no talks of them discontinuing it. There were no talks of them, you know, getting rid of the Naked brand. It was still something that was very much like relevant in the beauty space. You know what's interesting? Obviously, I don't have my Half Baked to refer to, but in my mind, I felt like it was more golden. I mean, it is golden, but I feel like in my mind, I thought that it was a brighter gold. Still looks pretty though. Anyway, so I decided to declutter my Naked palette. It wasn't limited edition, and I vividly remember, I'm spraying it with Fix Plus. I don't think that that's really doing much, but at this point in my life, it's kind of habit for me. But I remember thinking, I mean, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to get rid of a palette that was like my first major purchase, one that's so popular in the beauty space? Like, is that where we're really going? And ultimately, I mean, at the end of the day, I decided to declutter it because I felt like it didn't have use in my collection. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, I can just like repurchase it if I ever feel like I miss it and I want it back in my collection. I'm gonna try and deepen up this outer edge, so I'm gonna go into a little bit of Dark Horse right here. I'm creating an eyeshadow look that I feel like I created a lot when I had this palette in my collection. I mean, now I have it in my collection again, but I also remember when they decided to get rid of it, discontinue it, I still didn't repurchase it. I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, should I go out and repurchase the palette? But you know, it had gotten more expensive. Maybe it was $52, $54 at that point. And I was like, you know what? I decluttered it for a reason. It was a palette that wasn't getting used in my collection. I don't need to go out and purchase it. And I can honestly say that has been a regret of mine. I regret getting rid of it. I am someone that I feel like really, like I feel sentimental about things, you know, like since then, I purposely did not get rid of my Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette because of the regrets I had relating to the Naked palette. Getting rid of it, regretting it, wishing that I still had it. So even though I no longer use it, I started to keep some of the makeup items that had sentimental value to me and that I felt like I still really wanted in my collection, which is not something I was doing before. I was, you know, getting rid of stuff saying it's just makeup, and at the end of the day it is just makeup, but I had regrets. I had regrets getting rid of my Naked palette. So I knew instantly, y'all. I knew instantly the second they brought this back that I needed to get it. And not just that I wanted to get it or needed to get it because of, you know, the fact that people on YouTube were going to be talking about it again. You know, I was like, I want this in my collection. This is one that I will not declutter. Now, is this going to be a palette that I'm going to reach for consistently? I guess only time will tell there. But I knew instantly that I needed it back in my collection for my personal nostalgia, it being the first high-end palette that I purchased, and the fact that I had these regrets when I got rid of it. Back when I originally had this, I don't think I ever really dipped into this black back here in Creep. It does look like it has a little bit of sparkle. I don't remember. I don't remember if Creep had sparkle before. Like I said, I'm not typically someone who uses a ton of black, you know, since having tried other eyeshadow palettes and now, you know, adding this one back into my collection. I kind of have a style, a way that I like to do my makeup, a way that I like to do my eyeshadow. And now I can see, you know, there's use here for a shade like this. I don't know that I'm really seeing too much sparkle. So if that's something that's going to bother you, if you're like, ooh, sparkle in a black, I'm not really seeing a ton of sparkle. Also, these shimmers, you know, Half Baked, it's not, I'm going to take my, oh, maybe I'll take a little bit of Sidecar and put it in the middle. It's kind of cooler toned, but it looks a little bit more shimmery. I was going to say Half Baked is sitting more like a satin. Sidecar looks like it has a little bit more of, it's a little more rose gold, but a little more oomph to it. So I think I'm just going to put it like right here in the middle where those deeper shades are connecting with Half Baked. I don't remember the Sidecar shade. I mean, I know I used it, but I remember my love for Half Baked to the point where I honestly at one point considered if I was going to buy that just in a single shade, because Urban Decay did years ago. I don't know about the singles now, but Urban Decay did have some of these shades as singles, and I considered picking up Half Baked. I'm just taking a tiny bit more of Half Baked, no extra like spritz or anything, and we are just going to put that in the inner corner. So that's kind of my story with the Naked palette, how I came to get it, how I came to declutter it, my feelings after. I would love to know if you ever owned it. Did you own the original? Did you pick it up this time? I would love to know. But what I'm going to do, I'm just doing like a little fluffing and blending. I am going to do the rest of my makeup and probably my lower lash line. And then I'll come back and I will kind of share my thoughts on this palette, if I think it's worth it, if I think that this is something you should consider picking up, and just overall my feelings on the palette. Okay, so I did finish the rest of my makeup. For the lower lash line, I just pretty much repeated what I did on my upper lash line. I went in with Buck and I kind of laid that down underneath, blended it out with Naked, took a little bit of Dark Horse in the outer corner, and then I used Sin on the inner corner for a little bit of a pop, a little bit of a highlight. But y'all, I have some thoughts. Are we happy that this is back? Should you purchase it? Is it something that you need to repurchase if you had the original? I'm gonna zoom you out, we're gonna chat. Okay, so here's what I have to say about the Urban Decay Naked palette. I keep wanting to say the new Naked palette. It's not the new Naked palette. I don't even know that they reformulated. I think they just brought her back. And I have to say, the nostalgia of it all, it got me, y'all. Like, I am so happy to have this back in my collection. I knew that I wanted to get it, but again, it's because it's those fond memories of like YouTube years ago when I first got into it, when I first found beauty YouTube, when I first started my Instagram, when I first started my YouTube channel. And this was, you know, a huge purchase for me when I first got it. It was the only palette I had for a while, and it's one that I loved and loved and loved. And because of that regret of getting rid of it, I mean, I do not have another palette that I have decluttered that I have regretted. There have been like the Lorac Pro palettes. I tried those, I panned some of those, and I didn't regret that I got rid of them. This one, there was always something in the back of my soul that I was like, I just wish that I had it. And then it was discontinued and I couldn't get it anymore. So for me, it is the nostalgia. I am glad that I repurchased this and had it in my collection. But at the end of the day, like, would I have purchased this if I didn't declutter it? Y'all, probably not. This is one that I feel like it's just tugging at the feels for me. You know what I mean? Like, it's an era, it's a time, it's a memory, it's a memento. And I feel like that's what really gets me about this. If you never tried the Urban Decay Naked palettes and you're like curious and you want to dip your toe in, I mean, it's $59. It's expensive, but I think the quality is great. The quality, I remember it being great back then, and I feel like the quality is still great now. It's blendable. The shimmers, they're going to be more of a sheen, more of a satin. They're not going to be like the indie that we've gotten used to with the bam boom sparkle in your face. But if you have mature eyelids, or like me, I struggle with eczema on my eyes, this is going to help not accentuate any dry patches. But if you're looking for a lot of bling and sparkle, this isn't the one for you. But these are great for every day. I think the formula is great. I don't think that Color Story is like revolutionary. I think that we've seen these. I think that it's been done. I just think that this is like a classic. It's an OG, and the nostalgia sucks you in. So I'm happy that I purchased it. And like I said, if you're curious and you're on the fence, I'd say go ahead. Like, I think it'll be worth it for you. But those of you who purchased it like back in the day and you still have it, or maybe you decluttered it, but you didn't regret it, I don't necessarily think that it's one that you need to go out and purchase because of the hype. I think that it is what it is. It's the Naked. It's the Urban Decay Naked, the original Naked. It is an OG, but this is limited edition, okay? And when it's gone, who knows if Urban Decay is gonna bring it back. They're saying when it's gone, it's gone. So I'm super happy with my purchase. I am happy to have it back in my collection. I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna pull it out. I mean, why not? I love the look that I created, but I would love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Did you pick this up? Are you eyeing it? Do you have the original? Did you try the original? Let me know your thoughts down below. Otherwise, that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.